first I got some questions. I was thinking about your dad, your experience with your dad.
Yeah.
Back the Ted Turner, the John Malone type
Yeah.
of scenario where did you learn like the inner workings of like how they negotiate spots and pricing and
Absolutely.
stuff like that? Did that help you negotiate, when you partner up with Jason
Yeah.
to go buy these
Absolutely.
spots?
Yeah. And so the main things I learned was, some kid's dad's a baseball coach. They run around the baseball diamond. Another kid's dad, owns a manufacturing plant. He's sweeping the floors there. I grew up at television stations. My dad, went to college for a year or two, like a lot of guys his generation, dropped out early to get a job because my mom got married, and he worked his way up. He went from newspaper to radio, and then he finally got into the TV business, and he became a general manager of a station. Someone gave him a little bit of sweat equity, and then he was able to then buy some stations and kind of grow it from there. So I grew up at TV stations. I can remember when I was in middle school looking at Nielsen logs, ratings, and transferring them over by hand from one log to another. And I would hang out with the sales guys. Thought they were the cool guys in the state. The sports guys and the sales guys were the cool guys. So I'd hang out with them, and then I worked in that space. And when I was in the TV business, I was one of the lawyers for the company, but I also oversaw some properties just due to my experience on the sales side of things. And I'm not the best in the world, but I know more than at least at the time than I thought most lawyers did. And so that was definitely the driving force.
Yeah. So, I want to stick on this just briefly because you guys have a substantial firm, Midwest, expanding from KC, St. Louis. You've got offices in Colorado. You're expanding very quickly, like you said, little over a decade, and it's really grown rapidly. Some people you hear TV's declining, and you look at OTT or you look at digital or social. The back of my mind and what I've always said, and I don't have the data, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, is yeah, but it's still supply and demand, and the CPMs and distribution is just cheap on TV and radio. So today, 2025, is that true, or is it like no, it is. You need to look at some of these other channels more seriously.
Well, like I told you, when I started, I literally just TV. You can't, at least in my opinion, you can't do that today. I don't think it would work. If I tried to follow our same game plan, 12 years ago today, it's not going to work. But I still think television, if you have the proper budget, I don't think you just dip your toe in. Okay. If you have the proper budget, it's still a really good way to reach mass audiences. Now, you don't have necessarily the modern targeting that, your pitch with OTT. And my deal with things, all marketing, I'm going to back up here. Sports were a big part of my youth growing up, and I played football through college. And one thing I learned through sports, I had a ton of failures in sports, more failures than successes, but was that the teams that I was on that did good, we really focused on what I'll call like the blocking and tackling. So the football example, if you can block and you can tackle, you're going to win games. So I apply that to marketing, and I feel like the blocking and tackling of our space is still the traditional side, television, outdoor, radio. And then on the digital side, again, the blocking and tackling, the basics, the SEO, the under the SEM arena, pay-per-click. I've tried so many different things over the years that would be considered exotic. And I can tell you most of the time, I've not seen the success with those that I have using the holistic playbook of, the traditional blocking and tackling and the digital blocking and tackling. That's just me. That's my experience.
So we got to jump. You got to give me some of these examples of the exotic. Are you doing like guerrilla marketing, like
you name? I mean, okay, I'll give you two examples. One is a micro example that I was convinced was going to. I was like, this is going to be the biggest thing we ever did. Probably 6-7 years ago. I'm like, hey, why don't we drive a little car out on the screen? Her text with a short code, mobile dial, short code on there. I'm like, this thing, no one wants to make phone calls anymore. This is my one-man evidence, right? Which is a terrible idea. This thing is going to kill it. We got a grand total. We ran this for a year, maybe. One individual text came in through this. We're driving the little car out on the screen. You can imagine what I'm talking about, the graphics, right? Didn't work, okay? I'm not saying it's not going to work in the future, because sometimes, in my opinion, with marketing, you're into things too the time's not right for it. Okay. There was a time when, the phone book was so prevalent, where there were other forms of marketing that today might be, SEO. Well, at one point when people had dial-up modems and the first guys were optimizing their websites, it may not have been returning to the degree that it is today. I don't know. Is that true or not? I'm asking you.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The
Absolutely.
first guys doing it just the timing wasn't right. And someone declared that a failure. And they were wrong because it's not a failure. Then we talk about something now like over-the-top television. Okay. We all consume television, or at least most people do today, through multiple means. It's not just, it was 3 channels back in the day. Then it was cable. Then you added a 4th network. And with OTT, I spent a zillion bucks on it, and I still don't know if I've gotten one single case from it. I met, in fact, with my OTT agency recently, and none of the questions I had, who else is doing it? How much are they spending? And is this working for me? None of them were addressed or answered. They were addressed, but they weren't answered. They were just showing me favorable evidence that that's all people are consuming. And I don't believe that. I go get my oil change. I'm sitting in the lobby of the car dealership, and Judge Judy's on, right? It's not, they don't have Pluto TV or Netflix running. The TV's still consumed in that way. So I've tried a bunch of exotics, and I'm not saying they don't work. And I've had some things work that we didn't think were going to work, and vice versa. But I try to stick to the blocking and tackling, and I know if we can do those right. But again, you got to have the right budget, as we've talked about. I don't think you can dip your toe into I know you can't dip your toe into TV, or you can't go put one billboard up and try to expect to see success. You can't do it with SEO. You got to commit to it. And when you commit to it, it's A, the money side of things, but B, yourself and your team and putting the efforts in to make it work and taking your time.